The quarantine wing of ITC-7, the 7, held air so thick and unmoving it felt like a flooded basement. It was a stew of bleach where trustees had lazily mopped concrete, sour sweat from unwashed bodies, cheap hand-rolled tobacco that pretended to be cigarettes, and a fear that had soaked into the walls like mildew. One cage bulb under a rusted wire cage dripped a sickly light that turned faces into gray wax. Time here had been crushed flat by state paint and endless waiting. Sergei Belyaev, called Wolf by anyone who mattered because the 4 blocky letters WOLF were hammered into the knuckles of his right hand, sat on the edge of a lower rack, shoulder blades pressed into cold cinder block. He hadn't moved in an hour, maybe 2. He listened and watched. His body was coiled like a spring, but the surface stayed calm, a dead lake under winter ice. He'd trained that stillness across 32 years, 12 of them chopped into stretches where one unneeded word could be your last. From the corner came the wet hiccups of a fish-fresh first-timer, a 19-year-old kid they'd already shoved down the sewer on the bus in yesterday. Above Serge, 2 long-timers with the dead eyes of yard hyenas snorted while negotiating the ragged end of a commissary pack. Out in the hall came the metallic bark of a key, the sleepy voices of COs, and, somewhere along the tier, the flat, wet percussion of a beating and a man trying to breathe between it. That rhythm was the yard's soundtrack. The same song, always on. Serge looked at his hands. The WOLF across the right knuckles wasn't art. It was a sentence. On the left shoulder, under state cloth, a snarling wolf's head bit a strand of razor wire. Under the collarbone, 2 8-point stars. Those burned no matter how many layers you put over them. They meant he wasn't a square, not a civilian, not a porter. He was a runner, a climber, a man angling for the table where the law of thieves gets spoken out loud. That rating was his road in and his trap out. A key turned, louder than a shot. Everything froze. Conversations died mid-breath. Even the new kid's sobbing cut off like someone pinched a radio cord. That bright, ringing silence that always shows up right before something irreversible stepped into the room first. The door scraped open, and a man came in like a piece of furniture that had learned to walk. Not just tall, wide, built like a solid oak wardrobe someone had swung off a truck. Close crop, bull neck, shoulders like a loading dock. His face was a topo map of pockmarks with an old white scar slashed through one brow. What it said was simple, blunt force that had never once needed to apologize. This was the yard's shot caller, a crown thief with paper and pedigree. Andrei Pimenyov, called Bor. Behind him slid 2 satellites, one wiry and quick with darting rat eyes, every joint flexing, nicknamed Sneaks. The other, a silent cinderblock with fists the size of small melons. No one remembered his birth name. Everyone called him Mute. Bor let a lead-weighted gaze skate the room. The kid in the corner forgot how to inhale. The hyenas shrank until they were just coats draped on bones. Bor's eyes skimmed them like trash and parked on Serge. "Sup, wolves," Bor rumbled, but the greeting was for one man only. There was no welcome in it, just a thrown gauntlet. Serge raised his head. Their eyes met. First test, a duel without motion. Whoever blinked first wore the collar. Serge didn't blink. In Bor's stare, he saw the cold curiosity of one predator measuring another that had stepped one paw too far into his feeding ground. Heard the news? Bor's mouth bent. One step forward. His 2 shadows drifted wider, cutting Serge off from the aisle like they were just rearranging furniture. "We got ourselves a fancy bird. Serge Belyaev, Wolf. Shipped off that central block to get his attitude adjusted. Word says you're righteous. Aiming at the crown, huh?" Each syllable was dipped in vinegar. This wasn't a stomp-in with boots. This was a mugging with rules, an intake ritual for men with medals. They don't make you scrub toilets. They try to snap your spine using the code you swear by. "Respect, Bor," Serge said, voice flat, no tremor. "Not here for re-education, here to grind the time where it lands." He didn't stand. Standing would have been a bow. Bor grunted. He liked the cheek. He hated the cheek. "Brave," he drawled. "We respect brave, but brave ain't enough to live decent in my house." Bor let the paws hang. Sneaks drew a prison-made ice pick from under his shirt, ground down rebar wrapped with a rag, and rolled it in his fingers without looking down. Mute just crossed forearms, an avalanche held up by habit. You... Boar jabbed a finger toward the corner. Get over here. The kid crab walked in on shaking knees. The smell on him was a child's accident. Name? Boar asked like he was bored. Kenny, the kid stammered. What's your beef, Kenny? 2-9, theft. He gulped. 2nd degree. So you steal. From who? From a neighbor, a stereo. It came out a whisper. There it is, Boar sang. A rat. Steals off his own porch. He turned his head a fraction toward Serge so only one man could catch the look. Watch close, Wolf. In our book, rats sit below shoe gum. We don't keep them at our table, but we ain't bloodthirsty. We got mercy. His chin flicked. Sneaks dragged in the only stool and set it dead in the center of the floor. You, up. Boar palmed a fistful of the kid's jail shirt and lifted him onto toes like a misbehaving puppy. Climb up and crow 3 times, loud, all the way to the booth. Do it. You breathe in the worker's tear and punch a clock. Don't do it. Boar didn't finish. He didn't need to. He just looked at Mute. Kenny shook so hard the stool legs chattered. Tears broke and fell like he was already on his knees at a fresh grave. He looked from Boar to Serge, pleading with his whole face. To get marked as a punk on day 1 is a life sentence inside the life sentence. It's a hole with grease-slick walls. Boar wasn't really watching the kid. He was watching the wolf. This was a snare. If Sergey shut up, he let a man get smeared for something that wasn't code true. Boosting a neighbor's box is dirty, sure, but it isn't stealing from the pot. Rat work, by the book, is taking off your own table, out of the common. Boar was breaking code on purpose in front of witnesses to see where the wolf put his feet. If Serge spoke now, he was calling the yard boss wrong in the middle of quarantine. Fistfight odds like that get paid in blood and paperwork. And even if Serge walked out breathing, the brand trouble starter would be hot on his back. If he swallowed it, he took the L in his first hour. Either way, you lose something you need to breathe here. Serge felt the cold crawl under his ribs. He'd watched a dozen men get measured like this. This wasn't just his bunk assignment on the line. This was his entire staircase inside the code. One wrong step, and those stars under his collar turned into jokes. He stood, slowly enough to show it was choice, not nerves, not a twitch of shoulders, just the whole height of him unfolding. He didn't match Boar's bulk, but he was taller, all whipcord and tendon, a quiet force that saves its bite. Hold up, Boar, he said, quiet but floor-wide. Boar turned half an inch. The corner of his mouth curled. Good. The pup had teeth. Something itch, Wolf? Not an itch, a question. Serge slid one step and stood between the kid and the men who would end his life without touching his pulse. You called him a rat. I heard he boosted a civilian stereo. Since when we run rat charges for civilian property like it's our own? A rat is a man who steals off the pot, off the crew's plate. This one's just green and dumb. You punish dumb. You put a hand on his shoulder and bend it before it breaks. You don't erase him. You're a crown man, Boar. You know what codeless theater does to a yard. You turn him out on a lie today, and tomorrow the workers lay down because there ain't any justice left to clock in for. Then what does the captain say when this place freezes? Serge didn't bark. He stacked the blocks and read them back. He put Boar between the written creed and the consequence with admin. He showed the room he knew the book and the math better than the man wearing the seal. And he let the word captain hang there. CO brass with leverage over privileges Boar wanted. A muscle jumped in Boar's cheek. This wasn't the choice he'd set up. He'd expected cowardice or a swing. He got a class taught back to him with his own chalk. Admit the wolf was right and you dent your mask in front of every pair of eyes. Ram it through anyway, and you write BP, brainless tyranny, across your own paper. Crowns have been snatched for less. You teaching me, pup? Boar took a step into Serge's shirt. The stink of rot tobacco and copper breath hit the back of Serge's mouth. Not teaching, asking, Serge said, the exact same tone. Truth is one size, or did the Seven write its own version last night? That was a strike to the temple. To accuse a crown man of personalizing the law is to point at the cliff edge under his boots. Boar went still. He stared into Serge's gray eyes and found steel that didn't flex. He saw a loner wolf that wouldn't roll on his back. Killing him here would cost too many receipts. 3 seconds. 5. The air in the quarantine cage turned to glass. Sneak stopped spinning metal. Mute leaned forward a hair, weight in toes. Then Bohr did what no one in the room had in their bingo card. He laughed, a deep barrel-bottom laugh that made the bulb quiver. "You ain't dumb, Wolf," he said, and slapped a paw on Surge's shoulder hard enough to rock him. "I was weighing you. Wanted to see if you had a spine. You got one. I can read." Bohr pivoted toward the kid, who was still on his knees, eyes wide like a calf in a chute. "You hear that, Cupcake?" Bohr barked. "You lucked out. A man with clean code put his name in front of yours. I hear again you're creeping through folks' closets. I'll string your guts on the fence myself." "Track?" Yes, thank you," the kid croaked, bowing to both like he didn't know which god to face. "Crawl back," Bohr said, and turned to Surge. The warmth leaked out of his voice. Something colder settled under it. "All right, Wolf. You passed something. Live. But clock this. This is the 7. Every step you take gets seen, weighed, and filed. Miss once, and there won't be a mouth around to say a clean word for you." He chin-nodded, and his 2 crows drifted after him. The door slammed, and the lock bit shut. Silence held one more heartbeat. Then one of the hyenas let out a low whistle. "You cooked him nice, huh?" Serge didn't answer. He sat back down exactly where he'd been, and let the spring inside him uncurl notch by notch. The ice behind his navel stayed. He'd won one hand. He'd also signed his name on Bohr's wall. He hadn't bowed, so he'd made an enemy with keys. The yard boss would wait. He'd find the smallest hook, then yank. The kid crabbed close on hands and knees. "Thank you. I owe you my life. Bounce," Serge said without looking. "And forget the debt talk. In here, nobody owes, nobody pays. Everyone drowns on their own." The kid flinched like he'd taken a body shot and scuttled away. Serge tipped his head back to the block and shut his eyes. Inside them, it wasn't gray anymore. It was an overexposed summer afternoon. He stood by a car waiting on his partner, Serge Hook Kryuk. Back then they laughed at the Echo Serge and Serge. They'd just cleaned a store's safe. Work the books would call neat. 80 grand in a gym bag. Big money for that year. Hook came out the stairwell, smiling and waving like they were at a barbecue. 2 vans and a squad truck rolled up the block like they were late to something. Hook didn't run. He just stood there, looking at Serge. In those eyes there was no fear, no surprise, just arithmetic, cold as a blade laid on the tongue. 10 minutes later, they took Serge down in the next courtyard. Hook had traded him whole to shave time, a friend who'd eaten salt with him by the handful. Serge opened his eyes. The sunburnt street vanished. The bulb was back, and the stink. Every man for himself, he told himself again, like scripture. He'd taken the first gate and kept his teeth. He'd earned the right to call himself a runner and not be giggled at. The price was stamped clear. He was at war already. One man, against the shot caller and the shot caller's weather. Bohr would never forgive the mirror Serge held up. Serge looked at the WOLF again and let a corner of his mouth twitch. The old jailhouse joke said the letters meant, "Wept over lost freedom." Another said, "Walls offer little future." He added a third out loud, for himself alone. "Wolf only lives forage. Lone wolves eat what they kill, or they don't eat." Blood had a smell. He could smell the future bleeding. Whether it would be his or someone else's, the clock would answer. He had 8 years of strict regime left for the clock to work with. The factory floor hit like a headache you can't blink away. Heat of metal, diesel that never burned right, the stink of men who'd given up on air. Hammering from the presses pounded thought into paste. On month 2, they slotted Sergei onto the shop detail. He hauled steel billets until his spine borrowed the rhythm. He wore the same dead stare now that had earned him the name Wolf on day 2. A heavy, unblinking look people stepped around without deciding to. The yard had done what yards do after a new dog growls through the gate. It pretended to be quiet. It watched. It waited. A hush with a pulse. Serge knew that wasn't peace. That was a chambered round. He wasn't a square doing calendar math and writing to a wife. He wasn't a broken thing oozing toward the floor drain. He was a climber, and climbers don't get to have private steps. Every move gets measured, every word weighed for copper content. The old thief who ran the yard, called Yakut, kept Wolf at arm's length and watched. Wolf felt that gaze between his shoulder blades even when Yakut wasn't in sight. It was like a hidden sniper holding him in the reticle. The test arrived the right way. Sudden, quiet, no orders barked. just a low word dropped like a bolt. Peye, one of Yakut's close hands, a blocky man with a fight-flattened nose and eyes as empty as spent shells, drifted up, jerked his chin toward the old boiler room. The boilers roared in there loud enough to swallow any shout. Serious talk lived in that heat. Inside, rusted pipes sweated under drifting steam. The air smelled of damp and rot. Pate tapped out a roll, struck a match off the wall. Flame flashed over his deadpan face. "Got a question," he rasped, smoke cutting his throat on the way out. "About the common." Wolf said nothing. He waited. The common was sacred. The pot, the crew's money, heat for the sick, help for families on the street, grease for the hinges that mattered. Touching it wrong was the worst sin here. They called that rat work. "Fourth dorm hatched a rat," Pate went on, staring past Wolf. "Nickel and dime, tea, smokes, little bites so no one sees, but men ain't blind." "Who?" Wolf asked. His voice stayed flat. Inside, things tightened. He knew where this road could turn. Chijik, cell 76, quiet, spooked. They stapled a body count on him on the street he never wore. 15 in the can. He's gone soft in here. Pate pulled a breath through the roll, then let it go. Yakut said close it quiet so it don't spread. You're new, but you got code. You decide. Pate ground the butt under a cracked boot and walked out without meeting Wolf's eyes. You decide. That sentence was a trap, with velvet on the jaws. It meant the paper would have his name on it. Hit too hard on the wrong man, you're a tyrant. Hit soft, you're weak. Refuse, you're a coward who can't carry weight. Perfect tripwire. Plenty had snapped here. Wolf left the boiler room. The machine hall's thunder hit him like hail. He knew Chijik, a small, twitchy man in his 40s with frightened bird eyes and hands that never found still. A sparrow in a yard of hawks. Hard to believe the little thing would steal off the pot. Fear should have frozen him before the thought formed. But prison bent men at strange angles. First move, he didn't go to Chijik. That would be cop work. He went to his own rack, sat, thought. You don't take Pate's word for gospel. You don't take anyone's. You see with your own eyes. Lights out came. The dorm sank into murk layered with snores, coughs, and fever talk. Wolf slid up, shrugged into a coat, stepped into the aisle. In the weak night bulb, there were shadows who were awake and watching. Every step here was public. He headed for dorm 4. The hall porter stepped aside without a word. Rank, even potential, opens doors. Inside it smelled like wet socks, fear, and old men. He found Chijik's rack in the furthest corner, second tier. The man was awake, flat on his back, staring at the underside of the ceiling, shaking. Wolf didn't climb. He stood below. Chijik, he said softly. The man jerked like he'd been hit. He turned his head. In those eyes, the clean, raw terror of a rabbit that's heard the dog's feet. Walk, Wolf said. They went to the washroom, tile and bleach and chill. A faucet dripped, counting seconds. You've got a bill to pay, Chijik, Wolf said, voice even. Not a threat, a form, the start of a procedure. For the common, men say your arm got long. Chijik shook harder. His face went the color of the tile. Not me, Wolf, I swear, he whispered, eyes flicking to corners that only sweat occupied. Oaths are cheap here, Wolf cut him off. Facts cost. They found extra tea and smokes on you. From where? Planted? Chijik stammered. I didn't take it. Why would I? To get thrown in the hole? To get cut? I want to live. Wolf looked straight into him. He knew what lies looked like. Lies flutter and flatter, offer bargains. This was different. This was animal panic. Who planted? Wolf stepped closer. Drip, drip, drip. Chijik only shook his head, lips trembling. Talk, Wolf's voice hardened. If you're not a rat but someone's making you into one, that's one story. But if you swallow this and keep quiet, you're with the men doing it. That's worse than stealing. The yard will tear you, and no one will cover you. That logic beats any knife. Being against everyone is a certain death. Chijik cracked. He slid down the wall to a squat, wrapped his skull in both hands. Vaha, he breathed, so quiet Wolf had to lean in to catch it. Caucasus crew. Wolf felt the temperature drop. The picture started to assemble uglier than he'd guessed. Beside Yakut's law ran another river in this yard, a tight knot of Caucasus boys under a bold young shot-caller named Givy, not crowned, but heavy. They paid into the pot and pushed at borders like a knee at a scab. Vaha was one of Givy's hands. "What did Vaha do?" Wolf asked, crouching. "He came last week," Chizik said, sobbing in the throat. "Said he knows my case, that I ain't no killer. On the street I was a bookkeeper. They hung a shortage on me, big one, and the charge got bent to murder. He said, take a body I never took, or my wife and daughter. He showed me pictures." His breath skipped. "He said they know everything. That if I don't do what they say, men on the street will... He swallowed. "He said all I have to do is skim a little, from a stash, tea, smokes, keep it my place. He said it's a test for somebody, that I won't get touched. He said it's their game with Yakut. I'm just a pawn. I'm scared, Wolf. I'm scared of everything." Now it was clear, not theft, a setup. The Caucasus crew had picked a weak sparrow and wired him with sin, then sat back. Sooner or later, someone notices the missing ounces. Then Yakut has to move. If he crushes Chizik, it's code wrong because the man isn't stealing for himself. He's under blackmail. If Yakut doesn't, that smells like softness. If he goes straight at Givy, that's a war Yakut might not want yet. And Wolf had been handed the blade. You decide, was designed to turn him into a dumb torpedo. Gut Chizik and Yakut can be handed the bill. Your boy runs wild, breaks men for nothing. That's a cut across the shot caller's face. "Sit here, say nothing. If anyone asks, you never saw me," Wolf said. Chizik nodded too fast. Wolf walked back through the cold and did the math. There weren't many plays, and all of them were bad. 1, do it. Break Chizik. Clean, simple, obedient, and stained. 2, do nothing. Tell Pate there's no proof. That's the coward's lane. He'd be filed and forgotten. 3, take it to Yakut and lay out the board. That lane had cliffs. He'd be stepping into a game far above his grade. He'd be implicating Yakut's own men for sloppy read. He'd be pushing Yakut's hand toward Givy. He chose the third. If he wanted to be more than a knuckle, he had to think, not just swing. Next day at Chow, he spotted Yakut at a separate table with his circle. Wolf waited until the plates were dry. When Yakut moved toward the door, Wolf fell in step and caught him near the smoke pit. "Father," he said, respectful and firm at once, the way a climber addresses a crowned man. "Permission to speak on yesterday's thing." Yakut stopped. He was a thin, wiry 50-something with a face mapped in old roads. His pale eyes were cold and exact. He tipped his chin toward the same boiler room. In the steam's hiss, Yakut thumbed a tin case, worked a paper cigarette, Bailomore, between long, narrow fingers. Wolf waited. "Well," Yakut said to the pipes, "you resolve it?" "It ain't about Chizik, father," Wolf answered, choosing each word. "Chizik is a rag somebody's trying to rub in your face." Yakut turned. No surprise in his eyes, just interest, sharp as winter. "Detail." Wolf did. No pleading for Chizik, no froth at the Caucasus boys, just facts, the family hook, the order from Vaha, the intent, provoke. He delivered it like a report, clean, square, no ask, no recommendation. When he finished, silence returned, pipes hummed, tobacco crackled in Yakut's fingers. "You tell Pate?" Yakut asked. "No, came straight to you. He told me to decide. I decided you should see the layout." Yakut studied him a long beat. Wolf held the gaze. Last step of the test. Can you stand there under a crown man's eyes and not bend? "Right call," Yakut said at last. In his voice, something new. Not approval exactly. Recognition. "Pate is a fist. Looks like you want to be more than a fist." "Good." He flicked the butt. "Here's the play. The test says you ain't dumb and you ain't scared. That's on your ledger. Now listen." The plan was cold. It was the only plan that fit this weather. "Chizik is guilty," Yakut said. "Not of rat work, of going dog, letting blackmail turn him into a lever against the common. We punish weakness too. Understand? So others learn. Any tie to snitches or chaos men brands you. You find him and you break his left arm, so he can still work but never forget. Do it in front of the dorm. Say out loud what for. Not for stealing, for letting provokers use him and nearly bringing heat on straight men. Everyone hears. Wolf nodded. Harsh, yes. But squared to the book here. Chijik wasn't a victim, he'd become an accessory, even under pressure. Weakness was a crime with its own paragraph. And the Caucasus? Wolf asked. That's a different talk, Yakut said. His eyes narrowed to a slit. Not your weight. Your task is Chijik. Do it. That evening, Wolf found Chijik on his rack, shrink-wrapped in himself. The dorm had about 30 in it. Conversation thinned, looks gathered. You're guilty, Chijik, Wolf said loud enough to rake the room. Not of stealing, of letting yourself be used against this house. You tangled with men who churn water, and you almost drowned us all. You pay for weakness and for stupidity. He took Chijik's left arm. The man squealed. Wolf didn't punch him. He twisted the forearm past nature. There was a dry, rotten branch crack. Chijik screamed, high, thin, an animal slit. He dropped. Wolf turned and walked out. No one spoke. Dozens of eyes tracked him. The weighing was over. In those faces now, fear and respect. He'd climbed a rung, night air cut. His hands trembled a touch, not from fear or doubt, from clarity. He'd taken the first real step. After this, there was no gentle road back. He had broken a man not in anger, not in a brawl, but by math. A surgeon taking a limb to save a body. Entry fee paid, first installment only. Years waited ahead. Blood, betrayals, fear. Chijik's cry would echo in his skull for a long time. A bell that marked the night he walked himself into hell on purpose. He'd passed the exam. He'd lost a shard of whatever used to live where men keep a soul. He knew he'd lose the rest. Evening in a yard isn't just the end of day. It's its own weather, a slow resin where time barely crawls. The day shifts clang, the CO's cussing roll call, the dog's bark fade into a thick quiet that hums like a stretched wire. In it, you hear the consumptive's cough, the beds complain, the whispers, and the far generator that feeds the fence. In that quiet, every sound is an event. Tonight's quiet was different. In the cell run that Cirque, another crown thief, a yard watcher, used as his office, the air was heavy as brew. It smelled of cheap strong tobacco, bathhouse sweat, and a kettle of jet-black prison tea, Shafir, steeping under the eye of a jittery, skinny helper called Fuse, a kid with fast hands and faster eyes. In a corner, a jail-made immersion boiler hissed inside a bucket that doubled as a toilet. The bulb under the rag threw mad shadows on flaking paint. Only the chosen were in the room. Bohr sat there, a pile of muscle and malice whose fists solved any question that didn't need words. The surgeon, a dry, wiry man around 50 with icy, unblinking eyes and thin pianist's fingers, sat still, the tendons in his hands like wire, his mind sharper than any shank, and his hair gone iron gray. The fact that this surgeon was here, inside this narrow inner circle, said enough. After the business with the Caucasus crew and the lice check that followed, they no longer filed him as just another bold stray. Now they watched him, weighed him. Cirque, the yard watcher thief with 2 blue 8-point stars inked under his collarbones, sat cross-legged on his bunk. A plain tank top bared his tattooed shoulders and chest. He sipped scalding prison tea from a dented metal mug and dragged his heavy stare over the room. His face, cross-hatched with fine lines, gave nothing away. "Dead day," he said at last, a quiet, husky voice that made every back stiffen. CO pulled a shakedown at dawn, that redhead bastard. Looked for something. By evening, silence. Like the place died. Nights like that bite harder than hunger. You start thinking. And thinking in a cage is poison. Thought only breeds rage or weakness. He let the words soak into the stale air. "You bore!" Cirque turned to the slab of a man. "You ever think how you ended up on this road? Not what you're in on. That's ink on paper. I mean the first slide. The worm that took the first bite." Bohr, the broad, scarred enforcer with a bull neck and fists like small melons, blinked, surprised. He wasn't used to questions like that. His job was to hit where the finger pointed, but a thief's ask is law. He scratched at the stubble on his jaw. Rope stood in his neck. "What's there to think, boss?" he rumbled, voice like rock on rock. "Company town. You go to the plant or you go to the pen. No third door. Old man drank hard. Ma bent her back 3 shifts at the loom. I ran with kids. Sack of cement off a site. bust a kiosk. Not for thrills. To eat. First bid is a juvie, he went on. Fight. Local chief's boy had a mouth like all owners' pups. I busted his jaw. Paper got written. 2 years to a youth colony. He spat on the floor. The old flare of hate lit his eyes. They taught fast in there. Eat or get eaten. I was big, full of dumb fight. A couple times the silk wearers tried to fold me under. Broke one's arm, drove another's nose into his skull. The thieves clocked me, saw I didn't bend or whine, started pulling me in, said, "You're the right kind, Boar, just wild. Live by the code, you'll be priceless." What code? Strong makes right. He shrugged, got out different. Plant, funny, they were waiting. You're ours now. Apartment jobs, then stick-ups. Small first, then heavy. We shook down a black marketeer, jeans, gum. Thought he was rich. He was under serious people. He paused, remembering. They found us quick, took us to the woods. The two with me got written off right there. Boots till nothing left. Me, the boss waved off. Said, "You got the right bat in you. We need that. You'll work for us. Pay off your screw-up." My choice was dirt or yes. I said yes. Started collecting, he said flat. From garage bosses and side hustlers. Not kid stuff. Soldering irons, all of it. Second stretch was grown man time. Armed robbery with great bodily harm. 10 years. Walked in as a known banger. What else? One road. No turning back. Out there I'm nobody. In here, I'm Boar. They fear me, so they respect me. That's the whole story, boss. Simple as a cow's low. He fell silent, staring at the floor. There wasn't a drop of regret in it, just dull animal fact. The path of strength, a lane too narrow for doubts because there wasn't brain room for them. Cirque nodded once and turned his gaze to the surgeon. "And you, Doc," he said, "you ain't Boar. Your eyes don't carry anger, they carry numbers. Like you're not living life, you're playing a position." The surgeon let one corner of his mouth twitch. His face stayed calm, almost indifferent. He slid a cigarette from a soft pack of Prima, rolled it between those thin fingers, leaned into the little flame fuse held out. "My road ran quieter," he said, blowing a clean ring. "Book family, father a professor, mother a doctor. They groomed me for the math faculty. I got in, got bored. Bored of clean lives mapped 20 years ahead. I liked hard problems. Math gave them up quick. I found other tables." He drew, exhaled. "I became a card mechanic, not a clown with a marked deck. I studied psychology, probability, the language of hands. I could tell by how a man held a smoke if he was bluffing. I didn't work Sochi rubes. My clients were shadow bosses, shop chiefs, directors, storemen, people with money they couldn't put in a savings book. Dirty money, I cleaned it. One night's take was 5 years of my father's salary. It wasn't the cash I loved, it was the power. Watching some fat produce director sweat when he put his Volga on the felt. Watching a party fixer's hands shake when he dropped the black fund. Ash tapped into a sardine can. I burned over a woman, he said. Singer at Metropole. I buried her in cash and flowers. She was a mattress for a BHS colonel. I skinned one of his friends for a very large sum. Complaints were filed in the right rooms. They didn't catch me dirty. They just built the case. Major fraud. He shrugged. At trial, I shut up. I knew the rules. Name the men I beat and I'd be dead in remand. Took it all. 12 years? In camp, I learned quick. Fists aren't the main argument. The main argument is head work. I watched the oxen fold in a week while quiet little men outlive seasons. I mapped who stood with whom, who owed what, where the CO's seams split. Information cuts deeper than a shank and bleeds quieter. They called me surgeon, not because I cut flesh, but because I could excise a problem without noise. The right rumor at the right time, the right kite. 4 heads steered into each other. He let the cigarette gutter out and pressed it cold. Same tasks as outside, stakes higher. There you lose money, here you lose life. His story hung in the heat, all calculation, not system's victim like Boar, a predator of a colder breed. He'd chosen the path because it was interesting. Cirque's gaze settled on the gray one. The room's quiet went hard enough to carve. This wasn't curiosity. This was an exam. "And you, Gray?" Cirque's tone stayed level, but Gray felt the chill travel his spine. "You ain't a pure bull, and you ain't just a ledger man. You've got anger and a brain, and something else chewing. First bit I know, hooliganism, small time. Second one is 105, intentional murder, 15 hard. Between those bids is a canyon. Tell us how you cleared it. No fairy tales. We're all our own in here. Gray lifted his eyes. He didn't look at Cirque. He looked through the wall where the rag-dim bulb threw dancing shadows. His hand moved slow over short hair already salted with gray. He was only 28 and looked 40. Not a pit town, not a professor's house, he said, quiet, precise. Father was military. Mother taught school. We lived straight. After the army, I went to the plant. Tool and die. My hands work. Thought I'd live like that. Married. Daughter came. Then the 80s started, he said. Everything began to rot. Wage delays, theft, director building a dacha outside Moscow while the floor didn't see pay for 3 months. Bearable, we thought. You get used to any cage. He swallowed. The memory was fresh as a reopened wound. I had a kid sister, Lena, 18, bright, sweet, nursing college. She fell for the district party secretary's son, Pasha. Fancy boy and daddy's Volga, draped in imports. He turned her head. Promised mountains. I told her, don't go near them. They ain't us. They don't count us as people. She didn't listen. Love. Then he dumped her. Threw her out. Not just dumped. She was pregnant. She went to him. He laughed. Said he didn't know her. Said the kid wasn't his. His friends were there. Same breed. Gray stopped, knuckles whitening against his thigh. They took her, all of them. Then threw her in the street. The room went dead. Even Bohr stopped chewing and stared. She couldn't carry it, Gray said. She hanged herself. Wrote it all in a last note. I went to the militia, filed it. They looked at me like I was crazy and laughed. You accusing Comrade Kravtsov's son, citizen? You got proof? The note. She was delirious, wrote nonsense. Case closed in 3 days. No crime. My father tried to pull strings in the service. Wall everywhere. The secretary was untouchable. Gray raised his eyes. No tears there. A burned-out desert. That's when I understood. 2 laws, one for them, owners of life, one for us, cattle. Their law would never protect us. I chose to live by mine. I didn't sleep 3 days. I followed Pasha, learned his roots, his habits. I didn't want him just dead. I wanted him to know why. I waited for him at night when he came back from a drunk, alone, not in a stairwell, not a knife in the back. I faced him. He knew me, started puffing. What do you want, punk? Money? No, for Lena, I said. And I started beating him. Not like Bohr, to break. Slow, measured. I broke his arm so he'd never touch another woman. I broke his legs so he'd go nowhere. Then I took my father's straight razor and opened his face from ear to ear so every mirror would bring my sister back to him. I didn't kill him. I left him living, a cripple, a joke. For him, worse than death. He breathed once. They took me in an hour. I didn't run. I sat at home and waited. In court, I stayed quiet. The lawyer muttered about passion. I looked at judge and prosecutor and saw the same breed as the party man. Fed, groomed. They gave me 15. Murder with special cruelty, though that bastard lived. That's how they wrote it. When they walked me out of court, I smiled for the first time in days. I'd done it right. I crossed a line. There's no road back. Don't need one. Behind that line, lies, varnish, servility. Here it's honest. Here, if you're an enemy, they hit your face. There, they smile with a knife behind their back. That's my road, boss. I chose it. The day I learned their law ain't mine. He leaned back and closed his eyes. The telling drained him dry. Silence held the room. Fuse froze with the kettle. Bohr breathed like a bellows, trying to digest. The surgeon watched the coal at the end of an imaginary smoke. Cirque spoke first. He filled his mug to the rim with black tea and slid it toward Gray. Drink, he said softly. You said it right. No one becomes a thief out of a good life. A man becomes a thief out of a great wrong. When you see the state is the master thief and master bandit, takes your freedom, your dignity, your kin, then you stop playing by its rules. You start living by ours. Because in our law, there's more justice than in all their codes. Our law is written in blood. Theirs is written in ink, and ink washes with money and power. He swept them with his eyes. We're all here because one day we chose. Bohr chose strength because the world only showed him that. The surgeon chose mind because he saw it could rule. Gray chose revenge because they stole justice from him. Each road different. They all brought us to one place. Now the path is single and shared. We walk it together. Remember that. Принято. Перевожу строго по вашим правилам. Формат, стиль, сленг, связность. Соблюдаю. Ниже английский перевод данного фрагмента с сохранением тайм-кодов и атмосферы, без обращения к зрителю. May 46 and Basists. We were few and the jackals were many, COs, turncoats, and plain rot. You survive only back to back. He raised his tin mug. For the road, he said. It won't lead us to heaven, but in hell we'll set our own rules. Boar, the butcher, and Gray lifted their mugs without a word. The chief ear burned the throat, but that burn was nothing compared to the fire inside each of them. That night, in the small smoke-choked cell of the yard boss, they weren't just swapping war stories. A pact was forged. A pact of men who had thrown away the world beyond the razor wire and accepted a harsher law that, to them, was honest. Gray felt he had passed the last, most important exam. No longer a new fish, one of their own now. From this minute, his life wasn't his alone. It belonged to the common cause, the thieves' way. The price of that belonging, blood, his or somebody else's. Air in the block thickened like cold potato starch, heavy, gummy. Every breath tasted like trouble. The hush after evening count was a lie, worse than any shout. It was the quiet before slaughter, when even the rats in the wall voids freeze, sniffing blood. It began with nothing. The worst always does. A sorry pack of Prima smokes and one careless line. A quiet bookkeeper type called Sparrow, halfway through a 10-year bid for some economic misappropriation, got a box from the street. Between stale crackers and onions lay 2 cartons of cigarettes. He did what's right, one to the common pot, one he kept. In here, tobacco is harder currency than any other. Bad timing. A young mountain wolf out of Agdam's crew, a jumpy hothead named Ruha, decided Sparrow didn't need that much. He strolled up in the washroom while Sparrow brushed his state-issued teeth, popped open the dented locker, and shook a pack free. Sparrow squeaked, his mistake, something like, "That's mine. That's not how it's done by the code." Ruha flashed teeth. For him, raised where strength talks and codes are tools for your own, a 4-eyed square flapping the rules was a red rag. He didn't punch. Worse. He gripped Sparrow by the collar, mashed his face to the filthy sink, and made him eat tooth powder straight from the box, then wiped his hands on Sparrow's shirt and tossed over his shoulder. "Now your words will be clean, punk." The news spread faster than dysentery. Sparrow, gagging with white foam at his lips, crawled to the bunk where Valet sat fixing a split boot. He didn't snitch. He just sobbed and mooed, no words left. Everyone still understood, not just a stick-up, a bust of order, humiliation of a civilian under our wing, under Gray's umbrella, a spit in the face of the whole family. Pate sat on his rack sharpening a pencil lead down to a stinger. He saw Valet's face change, stone mask. The eyes, usually joking and reckless, filled with lead. Valet stood, walked Sparrow to a corner, asked 2 quiet questions. Sparrow only nodded, choking on tears. "Pasha," Valet said, voice dull like a sack of sand hitting a slab. "Let's go see Gray." Gray sat in his janitor's nook he shared with the quartermaster, a relic with more years inside than most had lived. Air hung heavy with macorca and old body. Gray looked like he dozed, tattooed hands flat on the table. When they entered, his eyes opened, clear and cold as Baikal ice. "Talk, Valet," he said without moving. Valet, who usually filled space with sound, kept it tight, each word a metal stamp. He laid it out. The smokes, the washroom, the tooth powder. Gray listened, and his face did not twitch. When Valet finished, silence dropped, broken only by the tick of a cheap wall clock. "Pate, what do you read?" Gray asked suddenly, cutting his gaze to him. "Test. Know the yard law, or just swing steel?" "It's a violation, Father," Pate said flat. "No claim from a civilian. He ain't a thief. The one who touched him stepped over the line. We pull the tab from the hitter and from whoever backs him." Gray nodded once. "Valet, go find Agdam. Tell him Gray waits an hour from now in the drying room, and tell him to bring his pup." The drying room was a long, narrow basement strip with ropes sagging under Gray state shirts and foot wraps. The air was dead, Chlorine, damp, rotten cloth. A single cage bulb through jerking, ugly shadows. A proper place for a talk that shouldn't have witnesses. Besides Gray, Pate, and Valet, 3 more family men lined the walls, faces blank but ready. Ogden came to the minute, not alone. Behind him, 2 shadows. Ruha, that same cocky pup, and another mountaineer, huge as a brown bear, crushed nose, heavy stare. Tigran. Agdam, unlike his bulls, looked loose. He smiled a predator's smile, black eyes flickering mean sparks. "Peace to you, Gray," he drew out, light accent. "Why call me so early, to such a place? Missed me?" "And you keep breathing, Agdam," Gray said level. "Unhappy business. Your boy," he tipped his chin at Ruha, "got lost today, rolled over a civilian under us and humiliated him. Not human." Ruha twitched. Agdam's finger flick stopped him. "Come now, Gray," Agdam cooed. "A civilian ant, dust. My young man got hot. Happens. He'll get cuffed by me. Why make a council over dung?" "It's not dung, Agdam." Gray's tone hardened. "It's order. Your boy set himself above the code. He answers in front of men." "Answer how?" Agdam laughed. "On knees before that Four Eyes. Don't tickle my gray hairs. Those I don't have. He's young. I deal with him. What's that to you?" "My business straight," Gray cut. "The civilian walks under us. His insult is on us. We take answer from yours. Will you bring him to judgment?" "I refuse your circus." Agdam's smile died. Face turned iron. "Mine I judge, and only I. Your questions for him you ask me." That ended talk. Claim was made, answer heard. Under the thieves' law, if a boss won't punish his own for a violation, he takes that violation on himself. Then the method changes. "I hear you, Ogdam," Gray rose. "Go!" Agdam turned without a glance and left. His bulls followed. The door slammed. Valet spat. "He don't see men in us," he hissed. "He only counts muscle." "He counts force," Gray said, staring into the wall. "We'll show it. Pate, Valet, tomorrow after lights out. Old press in the machine hall. You 2 on there too. Ruha will be there. Likely Tigran. No extra eyes. Only those in the book." Pate felt the inside of him knot to a cold stone. Not fists in a smoke pit, real steel. People leave bent or horizontal. He'd seen one on a transfer once. Not for soft hearts. "Understood, father," Valet said. A spark was lit in his eyes, hunter's joy. He had waited for this. "Understood," Pate echoed, voice low. Not fear. A ringing emptiness and cut-glass clarity. Refusing wasn't an option. That mark brands you a nobody, and the floor swallows nobodies. The rest of the day smeared into fog. Camp routine, slop line, labor, head count looked fake. Men laughed, cursed, clicked dice cups. Pate felt walled off, stares glued to his back. The whole prison knew already. Things like this travel in air, not words. Civilians watched with wary hope, thieves with lean interest. Admins scented trouble and pushed more patrols through the living blocks. They rarely slid into the machine hall after dark. Evening. Valet brought 2 wrapped shapes in a filthy rag. Unrolled them on Pate's bunk. 2 shivs, not knives. Ice picks, armature rods ground to 25 centimeters, tape-wrapped handles. Ugly tools with one job. Go in. "This one's mine." Valet took the slightly longer one. "This one's yours. It sits right. Light and honest. Stab for chest, gut. Don't waste on legs. You'll just anger him. No flinch. First touch is yours. They'll wait for you to twitch. Don't. Be like Hunt." Pate palmed steel. Cold had weight. He'd never killed. He'd fought, hard, to blood. This was not that. This left no space for maybes. He slid a fingertip along the edge, ground to razor. "Ruha's mine," Valet said. "He's my bill. You take Tigran. He's a bull, straight line. Don't grab up with him. Turn off his angle and stick twice. You'll see blood. Don't spook. Make sure it's his." Pate nodded. He tucked the shiv under his mattress, feeling its cold through the ticking. Lay back and stared at the ceiling. Sleep was a joke. Lines and scraps of his own reel ran through his skull. 10 years old. First time he saw his old man hit his mother. 17. First break-in with friends at a fixer's flat. First juvie stint. First time he hit a man, and the man didn't stand back up. Each step walking him here. This rack, this shiv, this weight that would decide if he lives or dies like a dog on a machine shop floor. No romance, no brotherhood. Just the cold animal law, kill or be killed, or worse, get broken. The signal for the meat rang in his bones like the bell for a last round. The blocks went still. Half an hour later, when nightlife settled into its secret lanes, Valet tapped Pate's shoulder. Time. They slipped out like shadows, moonless cold. Tower lights dragged slow cones across snow, leaving black oceans between. Machine Hall by night was a graveyard of giants, daytime thunder gone, masks of grease and scale stiff in weird poses. The old press squatted in the far corner, under coats of rust and grime. They were waiting. Agdam and Gray stood apart like two generals before the clash. Behind Ogdam, Ruha and Tigran. Ruha jittered heel to toe, face pale. Tigran stood like a block of basalt, arms folded across a chest like a slab. Behind Gray, his 3 quiet men. 10 bodies in all, 10 witnesses and actors of a yard court where verdicts are written in steel. Well then, Agdam nodded. Ruha and Tigran stepped forward. Shivs winked in their hands, twins to the ones Pate and Valet carried. Valet, Pate, Gray said quietly. Go. Valet bared teeth and slid toward Ruha. Pate faced Tigran alone. The mountain moved. Pate drew steel. His hand didn't shake. Adrenaline burned fear to white ash. Come square, Tigran growled, closing. I pull your soul out. Pate said nothing, knees soft, blade up, point high. He remembered Valet's lines. Don't wrestle, turn, and cut. Tigran stabbed straight for the belly, fast, crude. Pate slid off line. The shiv missed his jacket by a thumb. As they crossed, Pate slashed down the forearm. Tigran roared, shock and fury. Dark bloomed on his skin. He charged again, not aiming, trying to truck Pate under mass. Pate slipped, but Tigran had guessed. Caught him with a blind hook. Pain flared. Fingers went numb for a blink. He staggered, nearly spilled. Tigran pressed, grin bloody. At the edge of sight, Valet and Ruha tangled like weasels, blades sewing short, savage stitches, metal kissing metal, meat answering with damp thuds, breath loud as bellows. Tigran lunged. Pate dropped his head, felt wind of steel over scalp, and drove up from below. The point entered something yielding, not deep, an inch, maybe more. Enough. Tigran choked, eyes blown wide. He lurched back, clutching his gut. Blood welled through his fist. Pate didn't gift him time. Step in, another drive to the thigh. Tigran howled and sank to one knee. His shiv clanged off concrete and skittered away. Done. Pate stood over him, chest heaving, fist iron on bloody tape. No triumph, no pity. Just empty space where feeling used to be. He turned. Valet was finished too. Ruha curled on the floor, sucking air. Valet stood above him, tip at the pulsing throat. A slice marked Valet's brow. Blood leaked under his shirt at the ribs, but he stood straight. Silence fell like snow. Gray walked to Ogdam. Your men paid, he said. They answered for their violation. Matters closed. Agdam's face went black with rage. He looked past Gray to his sprawled fighters. Tigran, pushing up on his palms. Ruha, whimpering with pain and shame. Take yours, Gray said, and turned. We're gone. They left without talk. Behind them, groans and curses thinned into the machine hall's dead air. 1:20:25. It was a reminder for their own. Sensing the ground shifting under him, Yakut rebuilt the foundation from scratch. First and most important, don't steal from a thief. Rat work isn't just theft. It's spitting into the Brotherhood's soul. You don't take from your own. The common pot is sacred. The common pot is sacred. Whoever lifts a hand against the kitty isn't a thief, isn't a stray, isn't even a man. He's a rat. And there's only one talk with a rat. Under the bunk with it, and let it finish its days there if it's lucky. Pasha the Greek snorted. Everyone knows that, Yakut. ABCs. They know. They don't all remember. Yakut cut him off. The forgetful get cured by life. Second, Own nothing of your own. No family, no house, no stash. Why? Because that's the handle the cops grab. Family is your weak spot. A house is a tie-down. A thief is wind. Here today, 1,000 versts away tomorrow. Our family is the brotherhood. Our home is the whole country. Our property is the common pot. Whoever breaks that rule, starts a skirt and a crib on the street, signs a flat in his own name, isn't a thief anymore. He's a householder, a petty burgher. He has no place among us. He erased himself from the circle. Gray squeezed his mug harder. He saw his mother's eyes in court, red from crying, her hair already gray. She was his family. So, he'd already broken it? No. Yakut meant a wife, kids, the things that make a man vulnerable. Mother is different, sacred. Or did even that have a thieves' reading? Third, never work, Yakut went on, voice turning harder. Not for a boss, not for the state. A thief doesn't work. Work is for squares and empties. We live another way. Our craft is taking what's badly watched. Our tools are brains, nerve, and luck. Anyone who ever picks up a pickaxe in camp on a guard's order, anyone who clocks in at a factory on the street, he's stained. He admitted their power over him. He broke. Such a man gets no trust among us. From the storeroom came the sound of shefir being poured into tin mugs. Fourth, serve nowhere. Not in the army, not in the cops, nowhere. Don't take up a weapon the state hands you, because with that weapon, they'll make you shoot men like you, or defend what we despise, their law, their order. Whoever served is a gunner. Talk with him is short. He swore an oath. We have one oath only, the thieves' oath. Silence. Gray pictured them in the tight smoke-stained closet. Weather-scoured faces, eyes that had seen too much. Priests of a cruel cult, and Yakut was chanting its main prayer. Fifth, Yakut's voice fell to almost intimate. No cooperation with power in any form. No statements, no witness stands, no signatures. If they grab you, shut down. Let them break you, press you, endure, breathe through it, but don't turn punk, because punk is a brand for life, and you won't wash it off in the next world either. Whoever curled, whoever gave up his own, whoever cut a deal with the yard boss, no forgiveness, ever, anywhere. For us, he's worse than dead. He's an enemy. And we erase enemies like we crumble stale bread. At Sukari's nickname, a draft seemed to run the barrack. Even the hard men pretending to sleep went rigid under their blankets. And last, summit, Yakut finished. Honor the code. Live by conscience, by our thieves' conscience. Help the brotherhood. Keep your word. Be fair at sit-downs. Don't lean on a civilian without cause. Our code isn't just don'ts. It's our way of life, our strength. While we hold it, we're people. We're thieves. The moment even one clause bows, everything collapses. The storeroom door shut. Voices dropped to whispers. Gray set his mug on the floor. His hands shook. He knew all this, heard it on transfers, in cells, read it in old drifters' eyes. It's one thing to know, another to hear it as a testament, a vow before a fight not all will survive. He understood. Yakut was readying them for war. A war with the beast, with the administration, with the whole world. And in that war, the chief weapon was this code. 3 days passed. The tension didn't drain. It thickened into a clammy cold film over everything. The beast and his circle behaved quiet, but the quiet was ominous. They were waiting, and they got what they wanted. It started small. An old-timer, Uncle Kolya, respected in the barrack for quiet hands of gold. A man who could sculpt anything out of breadcrumb, lost a month's makorka and 2 packs of tea. Not much out there, but in here, where a pack is hard currency, it was serious. Uncle Kolya, a small dry bird of a man with 15 years already served for some domestic mess, fretted, stalled, then went to the barrack boss, a young stray called Fuse. The sit-down began after lights out. Under the dim bulb, they hammered together a table in the center. Yakut, Pesha the Greek, and Fuse sat behind it. Yakut jerked his chin for Gray too. Sit, watch. The beast and his men didn't come. They ostentatiously stayed on their racks, showing that old guard justice didn't concern them. Fuse, worrying a matchbox in his fingers, laid it out. Uncle Kolya said his goods were gone. Georgian tea, 2 packs, and makorka. Stashed in the mattress like you do. Today he reached empty. Yakut turned his heavy head toward the old man. Uncle Kolya, you suspect anyone? Maybe you moved it yourself and forgot. Come on, Yakov Mikhailich, the old man wriggled, scared to offend with a doubt but scared to lie. I'm not new here. One spot I use, always. Fed that spot for years. No one but me knew it. Then someone pawed through another man's things, Pasha the Greek stated, eyes sweeping the bunks. A rat's in the barrack. The word rat cracked like a shot. Men rolled on bunks. Air turned icy. It's one thing when thieves' feuds brew out there at councils. Another when filth floats here in the common house. Fuse, did you run a check? Yakut asked. Did, the barrack boss nodded. We went over bunks while everyone was at work. Quiet, no noise. And? Fuse stalled, gathered nerve, then said to the floor, in Spike's duffel, under rotten laundry, we found 2 packs of the same tea and Majorca loose. A dead silence fell. All eyes slid to the far bunks where Videk Spike sat, a lean 40-something with jittery eyes. Once he moved among the thieves, even carried some weight, then slipped, broke, and was stripped. Since then he lived nowhere, no longer thief, not yet civilian. Always hungry, always humiliated. He tried to glue himself to one side or the other. Both pushed him off. Drag Spike here, Yakut ordered, voice flat. 2 young cons yanked him down. He didn't fight, only trembled fine. They brought him to the table. He stood heads down, picking at a trouser seam. Yours? The Greek asked, nodding at the tea on the plank. Not mine, Spike rasped. Planted. Who planted it? The Greek smirked. Father Frost, look at people's eyes when you talk, scum. Spike flinched and lifted his gaze. Animal terror sloshed there. I didn't take it, I swear. It's a setup. What setup, Vitek? Yakut asked, almost fatherly. Who needs to frame you? You're a blank space. Tell it straight. Maybe need drove you, maybe the devil twisted you. Own it, and maybe we'll understand. Old trick. Give a slice of hope to loosen a tongue. Gray saw a spark flash in Spike's eyes. He was ready to confess, drop to his knees, beg. Then his gaze jumped to the dark corner where the beast men sat, and the spark died. Didn't take it, he repeated, stubborn. Planted. Yakut sighed heavy. Pity. I gave you a chance. Fuse. What else? Fuse pulled a shiv from his jacket. Simple spoon steel ground to mirror. This too, he said, in his boot shaft. That changed everything. Tea is rat work. A blade is intent. Why the iron, Spike? Yakut's voice went to steel. Going to walk on men or reach higher? For defense, Spike peeped. Times are scary. You'll see scary now. Yakut rose, towering like a cliff. You filth took the last from an old man, a man who may have given you his last crust when you were starving. You didn't just steal, you spat in the soul, our common soul. He turned to the barrack. Anyone got something to say on Spike? Silence. No one wanted hands in this? Good, Yakut nodded. Then the word is ours. He sat. The Greek, Fuse, and he traded looks in quiet for several minutes. Their court. Gray sat beside them, feeling extra, but knowing his presence was a lesson too. Yakut was showing the machine at work. At last, Yakut spoke, to the Greek, but loud enough for the whole barrack. By the code, rat work draws the harshest pull. A man who drags from his own has no trust. He's a worm chewing the apple from inside. The family can't keep such rot. Drop him, the Greek said short. Ice moved inside Gray. Drop him, make him a rooster. Worse than death. Death is an end. A dropped man is lifelong torment, humiliation. Bottom of the prison food chain, where anyone can smack or soil you without payback. A brand that never washes. Hearing the word, Spike collapsed to his knees. Brothers, Yakov Mikhailich, don't, I'll tell it all of it, he cried, clutching Yakut's pant leg. It wasn't me, it was them, the beast people, they forced me. The barrack froze again. Now, eyes cut toward the beast's bunks. He didn't move. Only his smile widened in the half-light. Who forced you? Yakut asked, kicking Spike away in disgust. Bor, Spike blurted. Bor was one of the beast's enforcers, a stupid, cruel hill of meat. He came, said if I didn't plant a stash on the old man, then find it and bring it to them, they'd do me themselves. He gave me the blade, said if anyone twitches, cut. They wanted to splash mud on you, so you judge wrong at the sit-down. so the civilians would start grumbling. It was true, Gray felt it at once. A neat, multi-step game from the beast. Box Yakut into no win. If he forgives Spike, he breaks the code, shows softness. If he punishes him, he punishes an innocent, and everyone will know he bent under the beast's push. Perfect trap. Yakut said nothing. He looked down at the trembling Spike, then raised his eyes to the beast. Their gazes met across the barrack. Everything balanced there. "You're lying," Yakut said at last, voice empty. "You're lying to save your hide. You're a rat and a coward on top. You try to smear decent cons." Spike howled, realizing the sentence was final. "No, I'm telling the truth. Ask them." "Ask who?" the Greek sneered. "The ones you slung mud at? You think we'll believe you over the Brotherhood, freak?" Gray stared at Yakut, not believing his ears. Yakut understood everything. He knew Spike told the truth. Admitting it meant starting war with the beast right now, a war he might not be ready for. He chose to sacrifice a pawn. He chose order over fairness. "Take him," Yakut ordered, turning away, "and do what's proper with a rat." Two youths grabbed the wailing Spike under the arms and dragged him to the far corner, toward the bucket. What happened next, Gray saw like through fog. A few men walled off the corner with blankets. No scream, no struggle sounds. Only, a minute later, a low animal sob, full of despair, and then silence. When the blanket dropped, Spike lay curled on the floor. No one had beaten him. They had simply dropped him, humiliated him the deepest way this world knows, made him untouchable. The lads who did it stepped out and ostentatiously wiped their hands on their pants. One walked to the washroom and scrubbed his hands with soap for a long, savage minute. The barrack was so quiet, you could hear the bulb's transformer hum under the ceiling as it lured night moths. Yakut stood. "That's what happens to those who forget the code," he said loudly, eyes cutting the dark where the beast sat. "One law for all. No one dodges the bill." He turned and walked back to his closet. Pasha the Greek followed. Gray stayed at the table alone. 2 packs of Georgian tea lay before him, the price of a human life, or of something worse than life. He stared at them and felt nausea rise to his throat. He understood the code's core. It wasn't just a rule book. It was a millstone that ground everyone, right and wrong alike, for one aim, to preserve the power of those standing on its top. Justice, conscience, words for suckers. Here, there was only expediency. And today, Yakut showed he would sacrifice anyone to keep his order, even if that order was already rotten inside. Gray looked up at the beast. The beast looked back and smiled. He had won. Without a word, without lifting a finger, he'd made Yakut carry out his will and humiliate himself. That night, Gray couldn't sleep for the first time in years. Keys in locks, dogs barking beyond the fence, the barracks snore. It all merged into one drone. Louder than all was that inhuman sob of Spike and Yakut's calm, merciless voice. Order above justice. 1:35:47. He lay on his bunk, staring into the dark ceiling, feeling the thieves' crown he'd chased turning into a crown of thorns, its spikes pressing straight into his brain. For the first time he asked himself, was he ready to wear that crown? Ready to become like Yakut, or worse, like the beast? No answer. Only the dead, lightless night of a max security camp, and the dead weight of knowing how the code really works. Not in words, but in deeds, in blood, in humiliation, in fear. Air in the zone thickened to swamp slurry. It didn't just press on shoulders. It seeped into lungs and settled on the tongue with the taste of rust and stale fear. The last few weeks after the council where Antip cemented his power passed as a slow, taut lull, a predator coiled before a leap. Civilians in the shop worked in silence, glancing around. The thieves in barracks met less for long talks. Even the wolves stayed quiet, waiting to see who'd win. Everyone felt it, a rotten calm before a storm. The first bell wasn't the thud of batons or a siren's wail. The first bell was a whisper. It started with Kolya the Cough, a walking skeleton from Barrack 6, kept as a gopher, running for smokes, rinsing long johns for small-time hoods. He was scrubbing floors in the thieves section, as usual, when his eye snagged on a strange glint on the ceiling beam, right over the table where Antip and Hassan usually sat. A dark, web-choked corner no one looked at. Kolya, thin as wire, eyes always skittering, froze, peering. In the dust ball, something winked. Not metal, not glass, something else. A tiny, almost invisible dot, like the pupil of some unknown insect. He said nothing. Only when Antip walked by, Kolya, still mopping, head down, hissed so soft it barely existed. "Antipalich!" Look up, the beam, only not obvious. Antip didn't slow. He shot Kolya a quick, hooking look, walked to his rack, sat, lit up. Smoke filled his lungs with bitter heat. He slowly rolled his neck as if loosening it, let his gaze slide across the ceiling, and saw the little black eye welded into rotten wood. A miniature camera no one here had seen before, not the clunky box at the gate. Something new, spy grade. A cold ran his spine, not fear, anger, low and poisoned. The camp boss, Lieutenant Kolder Zeman, and his right hand, the fox-smiling ops man, Major Belyaev, had switched tactics. No more battering the door with batons. They'd chosen the keyhole. That evening, with only night bulbs glowing, Antip called a tight circle. Hassan, Gray, old Urka, who'd lived through Stalin's camps. A couple more proven men. They whispered under a transistor radio cranked to drown them with some wheezing Soviet ensemble. "It's the yard boss," Hassan growled, voice a stone in the dark. "Belyaev, his handwriting. He doesn't break you, he poisons you. We rip it out by the root and shove it up." "Sit," Antip said evenly, eyes on the lighter flame dancing on the wall. "We rip this one, they hang two. Rip two, they seed the whole barrack. That isn't a solution. That's hysteria." "What's the solution then?" Hassan snapped. "Sit under this eye and smile, talk kitty, hold trials. We're fish in a tank now. Every word lands on his desk." Gray, who'd been rolling bread bead worry beads, raised his faded eyes. "Antip's right. Before, press cell. They break bones, beat out your guts. If you hold, honor to you. If you fold, you're punk. Simple. Now it's different. They want us to eat each other. See an informant's shadow in every man. That piece of iron up there, it's less for them than for us. To make us scared to open our mouths." Antip nodded, respecting the old man's clarity. "Exactly. They plant paranoia. If we start digging eyes out and staging purges to find rats. We play by their rules. We turn the zone into a snake pit ourselves." They talked a long time. Decision. Touch nothing. Leave the camera as if unnoticed. Move all real talks to the bathhouse, the boiler room, the dead corners of the shop where clanging presses and steam hiss, smother any whisper. Most of all, they had to gauge how far the yard boss had gone. The answer came 2 days later, wearing Major Belyaev's face. Antip was in his supply closet, nominally for tools, really his office, counting smokes, tea, sugar, balm, warmth from the street. He had to allocate it cleanly across barracks, keep the brotherhood sweet and support the civilians. The door opened without a knock. Belyaev stood there, short, trim, uniform knife-creased, the same polite predatory smile. 2 guards behind him with rubber democratizers. "Antipov," Belyaev sang, stepping in and eyeing the tight room with polite disgust. "Busy with a matter of state, distributing public wealth." "Busy with my own business, comrade chief," Antip said, calm, not rising. "Putting order in. You demand it. Order." Belyaev smirked and perched on a stool. The guards plugged the exit. "Order is my business, Antipov. Yours is sewing mittens and following regime. But I see you've taken more on. Decided you're the boss here?" Antip studied his cold, mocking eyes. "Not a random squeeze. An opening move. I keep men from cutting each other's throats. Keep the no limits down." "Noble," Belyaev nodded. "Robin Hood of Squad 17. Only catch, your order is expensive for the state. Fights, stabbings, work refusals, and worst, disloyalty. You built a state inside a state. Your own laws, your tax. What's it called? The kitty." At kitty, Antip tensed inside but kept his face stone. "Don't know what you mean." "Do you?" Belyaev chuckled, soft and nasty. I know last week you warmed the hole. 2 packs of Bellamore and half a kilo of sugar. I know 2 days ago you and Hassan from Ufa discussed a bull from Barrack 4 who robbed a civilian. Decided to drop him, right?" Blood emptied from Antip's face. Camera, and not just camera, a mic. They'd heard it all, every talk at that table. I even know, Belyaev lowered his voice to conspiratorial hush, leaning in, that after you moved the main kitty from under Nar's bunk, you put it in the old dryer's vent shaft. About 5,000 if I'm not mistaken, plus a taste of gold. Not bad for a max camp, eh, Antipov? A punch under the ribs. Knockout. They knew everything. Every move, every word, every thieves' secret. The paranoia they'd tried to ignore wasn't paranoia at all. In their world, built on secrets and trust, there was a gaping hole, and the yard boss watched them like insects under glass. "What do you want, Major?" Antip's voice rasped but stayed even. "I want order," Belyaev repeated, leaning back. "Real Soviet order. Your thieves' hive spoils it. You're a tumor. I'll cut you out. With a scalpel or a rusty axe. Depends on you." "I don't understand." "You do," Belyaev said. "You're no fool. You're not like Hassan. He's a dinosaur, relic, believes in your notions like scripture. You see the world changing. Your code worked in the 30s, the 50s. In 1987, it's a joke. You cling to medieval law in an age of microelectronics." He slid out a pack of Marlboros, clicked a foreign lighter. Rich smoke cut through Makhorka and damp. "I'm offering a deal, Antipov. You're the watcher. You've got weight. Help me bring order. Don't rat anyone in your words. Don't become punk in your book. Just help me remove the worst cases. Hassan, the negators who do nothing but riot and slice veins. Drop me a couple steel caches. Flag a brewing fuss. Small things. In return, I look past your little commerce. Tea, smokes. I leave your power. The zone runs quiet. Civilians work. You stay watcher. I report stable situation upstairs. Win-win." Antip watched him and felt his insides flip. The foulest, most delicate offer he'd ever heard. No beatings, no racks. A buyout. Trade his soul for calm and power. Make him the administration's chain dog while keeping the thieves' halo. A goat in a thief's crown. "I'm a thief," Antip cut him off. The words landed like a hammer on an anvil. "I don't deal with cops." Belyaev sighed, like a teacher let down by a dull pupil. "Thought so. A pity. You could be king here. You'll be nobody. Well then, Antipov, you've chosen. Axe it is." He rose, squared his tunic, and tossed over his shoulder to the guards. "Start." The moment he left, the guards poured in. They didn't touch Antip. They dismantled the room with a cold rage, ripped the mattress and dumped tobacco on the floor, stomped cigarette packs to pulp, poured tea and sugar into a bucket of gray water. They destroyed the warmth, the link to the brotherhood, the symbol of his care and his status. Antip sat on the stool, fists white at the knuckles, and watched. He knew this was only the beginning, a demonstration. When they left the wreckage behind, Antip sat a long time in the quiet. He thought less about the damage than about Belyaev's words. The vent shaft, the 5,000. Only someone from the tightest circle could have leaked it. Someone who'd been at that last, most secret sit-down. Hassan, Gray, Vaska the Crooked, Pasha the Siberian. 4 men, not counting him. 4 men he'd once guarantee with his head. Now, one was a rat. By evening, the news that the yard boss knew about the kitty swept the thieves' world like plague. The witch hunt began. Hassan, black with rage, demanded blood on the spot. "Shake everyone," he snarled in a camera-blind corner. "Check each one. It's one of ours. We cut him right now." "And who do you cut?" Antip asked softly. "Gray, who ate 25 under the code, or Siberian, who saved your life on the roof. You get that this is exactly what Belyaev wants. He tossed a bone, and we're to tear each other's throats over it." Logic didn't work anymore. Suspicion's poison ran too deep. The Brotherhood split. Some backed Hassan, baying for blood. Others, more cautious, lined up behind Antip. Even they wore doubt in their eyes. Unity, the pillar of the thieves' world, was splitting along the grain. Belyaev struck again. A day later, Vaska the Crooked, one of the 4 at the secret council, was called to the gate with belongings. They said he was going on a transport to another camp. Everyone knew it was a lie. Men like Vaska don't get transported for nothing. He was going to the press cell, the local hell in the SHU's basement, a place men returned from broken or didn't return. Antip tried to intervene. He went to the squad boss for answers. On what grounds? Where's the order? Not your business, Antipov, the man said without looking up. Ops department directive, regime violation. What violation? He never left the barrack. Then he misbehaved in the barrack. Go to work, Antipov, or you'll follow him. Checkmate. Isolate one suspect and work him. Then wait. Wait for Vaska to break and name a name. Or not break and get beaten to death. Or open his veins. Either way, Belyaev won. He displayed absolute power. A week crawled by. A week stretched into an age. The zone held its breath. Each day Hassan came to Antip. Well, had enough waiting? The crooked one will sing like a nightingale. Give us all up piece by piece. Then they'll feed us into that grinder one by one. And you, still playing. What do you propose? Antip asked, exhausted. Raise a riot so they send in interior troops, face us all to the floor, then bury every second man in the cooler for half a year. That what you want? The air turned unlivable. Old friends eyed each other sideways. Every word counted double. Trust, the thieves' highest currency, went to zero. Antip felt the ground sliding away. The system he'd served all his conscious life was crumbling in front of him, eaten from within by betrayal and pressed from without by the yard boss's smart, merciless hand. On the 8th day they brought Vaska the Crooked back. Not brought, dragged. 2 activist goats hauled him by the arms. He wasn't just beaten. He was erased. His face was one swollen blue-purple mass. Eyes sealed, only narrow slits staring dead at nothing. He couldn't walk. They dumped him in the barrack aisle like a trash sack. Everyone rushed over. Antip dropped to his knees, tried to turn him. Vaska, Vasya, what did they do to you, brother? Vaska made a wet rasp. A thin line of bloody foam slid from his mouth. He tried to speak. His lips worked, but no sound came. Then everyone saw it. His tongue, almost completely bitten off. At 52-2. Vaska the Crooked, to avoid becoming a snitch and handing his own over by accident, bit off his tongue. He chose silence and pain over betrayal. He stayed loyal to the code to the end, paying an inhuman price. Hassan saw it and howled. Not a shout. A long, feral animal howl. He lunged for the barrack door, and men grabbed him. I'll kill him. I'll rip that cop cur with my bare hands. Antip stared at Vaska's ruined body and dead, empty eyes and felt something snap inside him, something cold and hard that had been his spine all these years. He didn't see heroism. He saw a senseless, monstrous sacrifice. He saw the thieves' law that demands such loyalty turning men into butchered meat. Belyaev got no words from Vaska, yet he won. He showed everyone the price of resistance. He made them look at that horror and understand that any one of them could be next. That evening, after they carried broken Vaska to the infirmary, where there were only 2 roads, the disability block or the next world, Antip sat alone in his wrecked closet office. He stared at sugar ground into dirt. He replayed Belyaev's line. You're trying to live by medieval laws in the age of microelectronics. And for the first time in his life, the first time since he was 16 and caught his first bid and swore the thieves' faith, Antip thought the major might be right. Not that a man should turn punk, but that their world was doomed. Their honor code, their notions, their oaths. Just a ritual dance on the lip of a cliff. Proud, handsome, and absolutely useless against the cold, calculating kill machine that was yard boss Belyaev. The pressure from outside didn't just squeeze their world, it split it open, showing that under the guilt of romance and brotherhood, there was a grinder chewing human lives. That night, Antip asked himself the question that would begin his end and his awakening. Was this faith worth even one bitten-off tongue? Was it worth forging people into mutilated martyrs? No answer, only a hollow echo in his chest and the clear, cold sense that the old world had collapsed. And on its shards he'd either build something new or die with it. Air in the shop, the roaster, as the cons called it, was thick and oily. It stank of hot metal, cheap diesel, and hopelessness. A pale, watery sun barely pushed through windows crusted with a century of soot. The monotonous slam of machines burrowed into bone and shook the last thoughts out, leaving a dull, gnawing fatigue. Gray stood over an ancient lathe that probably remembered Stalin himself. His hands, scarred, ground with metallic dust, moved by habit, turning another useless blank. Work was filth for a thief, a disgrace. But here the hellish clatter had a loophole. Here you could talk. Machine noise beat any guard's ears and any rat's. Next to him, pretending to fuss with a jammed press, fidgeted Fuse. His face, usually lively, was tight. He was 10 years younger than Gray, but his eyes already held the camp wisdom that comes not with age but with the count of disasters survived. "They won't settle, Gray," Fuse said without turning, voice barely threading the din. "Barkis has the bit in his teeth. Since that council, he's a mad dog. His boys slither through the barracks looking for a pretext. Yesterday in 4th Squad, they grabbed a youngster, said he looked at him wrong, and beat him half to death. For fear? For show?" Gray didn't stop the lathe. Hot spirals of swarf fell in snaking curls onto filthy concrete. "Dog barks, wind carries," he said level. "Let him hunt. Our truth is stronger than his spite. We did everything by the notions. The sit-down decided. He went against thieves' law, not me." "Notions?" Fuse snapped, knuckles thumping the press frame. "What good are notions if tomorrow they break us one by one in the press cells? The yard boss already met him twice this week. Twice, Gray. What do they whisper? Barkis is skimming the kitty he hijacked, and the boss gives him a green lane for a cut." Gray clicked the stop. The sudden quiet was shocking. Far-off shop hum now whined like gnats. He faced Fuse. The near-colorless gray of his eyes hit like lead. "You afraid, Fuse?" Fuse flinched, held the gaze anyway. One of the few who could. "Not for me, for you. You're a bone in his throat. As long as you're here, he's not owner of the zone. He's no thief. He's a businessman in a crown. He needs power, not justice. He'll do anything, any dirty trick. And you? You want the old way, the clean way. Time's changed. Clean here is like a saint's icon in a whorehouse. No one wants it." Gray slid a Bellomore pack from his coat, handed one over. Fuse needed the paper. Gray struck a match, lit Fuse, then himself. Bitter smoke filled lungs. "There is clean, Fuse, one for all. On the street or in here, in the 80s or the 40s. Thieves' law doesn't change. People do, go soft, bend. Barkis is rot, and those who follow him are rot. Rot gets one answer." "Then maybe it's time to answer?" Steel cut into Fuse's voice. "Don't wait for his first hit. We know where his treasurer sits. Fly lives in the supply closet counting rags. One hit, and Barkis without money is like without hands." Gray drew deep, let the smoke slip from his nostrils. "Not human, from around the corner. He has to make the mistake himself, open and plain, so the whole zone sees he's no thief but filth. Then his own will tear him. And if his mistake lands on your neck, or mine, then it's too late," Fuse said, grinding his butt under heel. His usually calm face twisted with worry. He had given Gray everything, cutlass, perm, and now this god-forsaken Comey hole. He'd watched Gray hold zones, settle beefs with a justice no one had seen in years, cons and guards alike. And he watched that justice crack under a new, no-limits force. "Work," Gray said quietly. "And keep your tongue short. Walls listen. It'll go how it must." Fuse nodded, doubt still in his eyes, and returned to his press. Noise swallowed them again. Gray watched his back. He felt the same cold snake along his spine. Fuse was right. Times were shifting. Notions carved into his head like stone commandments sounded hollow to a new crop of hoods. For them, the prize was control over the kitty, the dope flow, the backroom card den, money, power. The thieves' idea, brotherhood, honor, turned into a fairy tale for fools. And the ops chief, Major Gromoff, slick as an eel, played the groups against each other, a careful balance that let him run the zone and skim his cut. He'd clearly backed Barkis. Gray was too inconvenient, too principled. You couldn't make deals with Gray against the code. With Barkis, you could buy anything if the price was right. The day dragged. After work, supper, thin slop reeking of rotten cabbage and a slab of slick bread. Then the evening count, wind cutting to bone, while guards slow counted the flock in gray coats. The barrack was airless and loud. Sweat, wet foot wraps, cheap macorca. Some played cards, some whispered on bunks, some lay flat, eyes on the ceiling. Gray sat in the thieves' corner. Fuse mended a boot beside him. "Bathhouse tomorrow," Fuse said, head down. Finally, lice are about to march in formation. Good, Gray nodded. We'll wash. Something in that everyday line put him on edge. The bath. A place where all are equal, naked, defenseless, ideal for an attack. You going alone? He asked. Yeah, like always. Our squad first. Why, you coming with me? Fuse smirked. You scared I'll drop the soap? Don't worry, Gray. I'm a big boy. I said I'm going with you. Gray cut him off. His tone didn't warm. And take Slant in the Buryat. Tell him you need your back scrubbed. Fuse stopped smiling. He understood. Okay, done. Gray barely slept. He lay eyes open, parsing every rustle, a neighbor's snore, a bunk's squeak, dogs far off by the dead zone. Dozens of scenarios looped. He sensed a trap, close, shapeless, lethal. He cursed himself for ignoring Fuse. He should have struck first, yanked the Viper's fang from Barcus. But he was a thief. He couldn't act like a no-limits butcher. His strength was the right, and right now, his right turned into his weak spot. Morning came, gray and raw. After breakfast, they drove First Squad to the bath, a low, blackened brick building breathing steam. Inside, hot, wet, the stink of mildewed wood, cheap laundry soap, and something sour, old. They stripped in the anteroom and flowed into the wash hall. Gray walked beside Fuse. Behind them, like shadows, moved Slant and the Buryat, solid, silent men, loyal to Gray. The steam room was packed. Heat bit lungs. Sweat ran in sheets. Through the haze, you could barely make out faces. Looks calm, Fuse rasped, dumping a dipper of ice water over his head. Water has a word, Gray muttered. His eyes raked the room, catching bodies, ink, faces through the cloud. They did the 20 minutes. Nothing. Tension eased a notch. Maybe he'd wound himself up for nothing. Maybe paranoia, the camp's faithful wife, played him this time. They stepped into the anteroom and started dressing, when the door banged open. A runner stood there, a young kid from cleaning detail, eyes wild with fear. Gray, ops boss wants you, now. Gray froze, halfway into his striped shirt. The ops boss, now, bad, very bad. Summons to the ops boss never meant anything good, especially ambush fast. What does he want? Gray asked, eyes locked on the kid. Don't know, the kid said. Says urgent, waiting in his office. Fuse froze, too. I'm going with you. No, Gray said flat. You stay. Finish dressing and head for the barrack. All together, Slant, Buryat, eyes on him. Don't blink, clear. Men nodded. It's a trap, Fuse hissed. He's pulling you out. If it's a trap, it's for me, not you. Sit tight, I'll handle it. Gray dressed fast, shot Fuse a short look, and followed the runner. Cold air after the bath slapped his face. 2 guards waited at the door already. No words, just a hard shove with rifle butts. They herded him toward HQ. His heart dropped, not an invitation. An escort. The ops boss's office was an island of polish and order in the camp's muck. Good tobacco and furniture wax scented the air. Major Gromov himself sat behind a heavy oak desk leafing papers. He lifted watery, unreadable eyes to Gray. Sit down, Knyazev, he said, using Gray's surname for the first time in years, not the handle. We need to talk. Gray took the chair. Guards stayed outside. I'm listening, Comrade Chief. Your house is in bad shape, Knyazev. Very bad. Discord. A war brewing. I don't need war. I need order. What discord? We settle right and fair. Fair. The ops boss smirked. Your fair interests no one now. Barcus offers modern management methods. He's a man of business. You're a man of ideas. Ideas don't sell today. What do you want from me? I want you calm, in the shade. Stop throwing weight. The zone will live by new rules, Barcus's rules. You sit quiet and ride your bit in peace. Maybe even get parole. I'll help. Heat flooded Gray's face. Step back, hand the zone over to a merchant who bought a crown. Be a doormat. I'm a thief-in-law, he said, each word hammered. I don't trade in notions or my honor, not with you, not with Barcus. Pity, the ops boss sighed, as if honestly sorry. I offered you a fine option, very pity. You don't understand, Knyazev. The price of your principle may be too high, not only for you. A shout sounded outside, far off toward the barracks, muffled. Then another, raw with horror and pain. Ice hit Gray's gut. He sprang up, kicking the chair over. "What's happening out there?" The ops boss didn't turn his head. He watched Gray with lazy predator interest. "I told you. Price. You refuse to pay it yourself. Someone close to you pays." Gray lunged at the door, locked. He pounded the thick wood with his fists. "Open up, you! Open the cop!" Through the door came muffled scuffling, shouts, and then a silence so thin and sharp it cut the ear. Gray slowly turned back to the ops boss. His face went white as a sheet. The hate in his eyes looked hot enough to scorch the major where he sat. "What did you do?" he rasped. "Me? Nothing." The ops boss spread his hands. "Domestic nonsense. Somebody beefed with somebody. Happens. Especially when men ignore good advice." The door opened. A guard stepped in. "Major, in first barrack, a body. Inmate Filimonov. Stabbed." Gray reeled as if punched. Filimonov. Fuse. He stared at the ops boss and didn't see him. He saw Fuse's grin in the bathhouse. "You scared I'll drop the soap?" "You can go, Knyazev," the ops boss said with syrupy pity. "Do the identification." They didn't drag him. He walked, legs rubber. The world shrank to a narrow corridor of gray coats parting before him. No one met his eyes. Everyone understood. They'd lured him out. And in that gap, the barrack filled with the sweet, sick stink of blood. Fuse lay on the floor between bunks. His body was twisted wrong. His jacket and striped shirt on the chest were a dark, clotted ruin. Someone had covered his face with a filthy rag. Buryat sat slumped against the wall, clutching a bleeding side. Slant sprawled a little farther off, not moving. Gray knelt beside Fuse. His hands shook. He reached and lifted the rag. Fuse's eyes were open. Surprise was frozen in them. He hadn't expected the hit. They killed him dirty in the back. A long cut gaped at his throat. Not just stabbed, they'd slit him like a sheep. Gray said nothing. He stared into the dead eyes of the man who had walked 15 years of hell with him. 15 years. He remembered young, cocky Fuse on juvie. How Fuse stood up for him in the press hut. How they split the last cigarette and the last heel of bread. Fuse was more than a friend. He was family, the only family Gray had left. Now he lay on a filthy barrack floor while his blood soaked old boards. And the fault was Gray's, because he was too principled, too proper. Because he believed in notions that couldn't protect the closest man he had. He closed Fuse's eyes gently, stood, and swept the room with a heavy gaze. Silence. Fear hung thicker than the blood smell. "Who did it?" His voice was low and hoarse, which made it worse. Silence. He stepped to Buryat. The man groaned, trying to rise. "5 of them," he rasped. "Barkas's boys. Pashtet led. They waited. The second you left, they clubbed Slant from behind. We tried to hold. Pashtet himself." Buryat coughed. Blood bubbled at his lips. Pashtet, Barkas's right hand, a no-limits mutt known for cruelty. Gray looked at Fuse again. The price. The ops boss had spoken of a price. There it was. The price of his thieves' honor, his brother's life. Something collapsed. The whole world he'd built on hard, immovable laws turned to dust. Notions, justice, brotherhood. Pretty lies for men ready to die for them. The ones who live and rule are the ones who spit on it. The ones who cut the unarmed, stab backs, make deals with cops. Something cold and black filled the hole inside him. Not rage, not revenge. Worse, emptiness. The plain knowledge that his life, his sacrifices, his faith were for nothing. He'd played by rules in a game with no rules. He walked out. The sky hung low and leaden. A fine, cold rain fell and mixed with tears he didn't feel. He moved without seeing toward HQ, toward the ops boss. He knew what he would do. Not revenge. Revenge is by the notions. Blood for blood. He was done playing that game. He wanted something else. He wanted Barkas, Pashtet, the ops boss, every one of them, to drown in their own filth. He wanted the machine that bred and used them to eat them alive. For that, he had to do the one thing worse than death for a thief, the thing that erases you from the human circle forever. He pushed into the office. The major still sat behind the desk, waiting. "Changed your mind, Knyazev?" the smirk asked. Gray stepped to the desk. He looked at the major with dead, empty eyes. "I'll talk," he said quietly. The voice wasn't his. "I'll tell you everything about the kitty, the pipelines, all his business, all his people, who, where, when. I'll name every name and every number. I'll hand him to you, guts and all." The major leaned back. The smirk slid off. He studied Gray like a scientist pinning a rare bug. He wasn't seeing a broken con. He was seeing something new and dangerous. "And what do you want in return?" he asked. "Nothing," Gray said. "I want nothing from you. Just give me paper and a pen." A thief who had lived 15 years by the law, crowned by the best of the old guard, a man who backed every word with his life. He sat at his worst enemy's desk to write a statement. He didn't renounce the thieves' idea. He renounced believing it still lived. The price for his brother's life was too high. Now everybody would pay. No picks, no rules. From that moment, the thief-in-law Gray was dead. Only Knyzev remained, a man set on burning down the world that betrayed him and dying in its fire. Night in the shoe isn't just darkness, it's vacuum. Time thickens into cold glue. It doesn't flow. It drips, one heartbeat at a time, in booming silence. Walls, furred with rhyme and other men's pain, press in and suck air from lungs. Arkin lay on bare boards, the bunk chained up. He listened to that muffled quiet. Here, in the concrete box, sounds were luxury. Sometimes a cough filtered through from the next cell, dry, torn, like a man trying to hack out his own lungs. Sometimes a guard's boot scuffed the corridor, steel, indifferent rhythm. He landed here after the riot, after Lame, catching the men's hunger and exhaustion, sicked them on the actives and the guards, blood, screams, snapped bones, all to dump a couple of unwanted gophers and show the ops boss who really kept the zone by the throat. Arkan hadn't joined in. He stood and watched the thieves' idea he once took as the only truth turn into a blood farce, a tool for trading lives. For refusing to support the common, they parked him here for 15 days. A quiet pact between Lame and admin. A clean way to sideline him and let him think. In that silence, where your only partner is the echo of your thoughts, the past fell on him with full weight. It wasn't a string of bold deeds anymore. It was a ledger of names, faces, fates, crossed out by him or for him. Crutch, his one real friend, shanked on Gray's order for doubting. Small Fry, an 18-year-old kid Arkan himself condemned to the bottom because he answered wrong at a sit-down. Dozens, hundreds of squares whose lives and pennies fed the thieves' engine. A thin, rattling voice seeped through the wall. The old-timer, phonograph, jailed so long it felt like forever. He rarely spoke, but on the blackest nights he started his confession, to the walls or to ghosts. "I wasn't no thief," he whispered, the concrete making it sound like a grave. "I played the piano at Astoria in Leningrad. Tails, bow ties, ladies in hats, gents with champagne rivers. 1962. I was young, stupid, fell for a singer, Lilechka, voice like crystal and eyes like emerald. But she eyed a factory shark, Aran Zakharovich, black Volga, 21, money like grain in a granary. I wanted, fool that I was, to show her I wasn't nobody. He had a dacha near Zelenogorsk. I knew where he hid the key, under the porch in a candy tin. Thought I'd crawl in and lift a brooch he gave her. Sapphire. Not for profit, no. To needle him, to show I could. The old man coughed, long, torturous. Arkin lay still. He'd heard it 5 times, but each told different, gathering moss like a stump. I climb in, and he's there with his pals. Not a evening on the dacha, divvying something. I hid in a wardrobe, held my breath. They talk schemes, timber, wagons, some so big my head spun, words heated. Aron pulled a nagant, don't know from where, and put one in his own friend. Bang. The falling man swept a vase off the dresser. Crash. I near died of fright. They stuck the other witness too. Slice. They panicked, scrambled. Me in the wardrobe, stopped breathing. They wrapped the bodies in a rug, loaded the car, and left. I bolted after, don't remember how. But I grabbed the brooch off the floor. A memory of Lilechka. Idiot. Next day they took me. Brooch in my pocket. My prints on the wardrobe door. Aron laid all of it on me. The theft. The 2 stiffs. No witnesses. And he had friends in OBKHSS and the prosecutor's office. They gave me the bullet, then swapped for 25. I'm on year 23. Lilechka married him a year later. Rocking grandkids by now, I bet. And me, I play the piano in my head. Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat. The voice faded. Silence returned, now filled with the sound of a phantom piano and the scent of a perfume from a life too far to reach. A life wrecked by a boy's pride. Arkan clenched his teeth. A square. A regular man chewed under the treads. But was Arkan's path any smarter? Wasn't he the same boy trying to show them? A new sound cut his thought. The scrape of a key in his lock. The door groaned open. A guard filled the frame. Out with your things. What things? Arkan rasped. What you got? Move it. They didn't take him to the common barrack. They steered him toward the shop buildings, a small brick box the cons called the ops boss's office. Arkan's heartbeat went cold and even, not an interview. The next move in a game he'd been playing with Ops Chief Major Belkovich for years. Inside smelled of cheap tobacco and damp. Behind the desk sat Belkovich, heavy, gone to fat, those watery, weighty eyes. Opposite him, hunched on a stool, sat Sparrow, a once thief who'd broken 3 years back. Face ashy, eyes jittering, never landing. Seeing Arkan, he turtled into his shoulders. Sit, Arkady. Belkovich tipped his chin at a chair by Sparrow, his voice oiled and cozy, the kind of cozy that runs ice down your spine. We need a word. Your old pal Skvortsov wants to help. He's got interesting tales about the kitty, about supply lines. You want to join the talk? Arkan sat without a word. He didn't look at Belkovich. He looked at Sparrow. No hate, just a cold, almost clinical curiosity. What makes a man cross the line? I couldn't anymore, Arkan, Sparrow blurted, head down, voice shaking. Understand me? I got a daughter growing. My wife writes, she's sick, needs money for meds. What am I sending from here? A pinch of tea dust? He flicked his eyes toward the ops boss. They offered me parole, half a year and I'll see my girl. Isn't that worth it? Your notions, who are they for? For Gray, who eats fat and sends kids to knives? For Lame, who kisses this same boss when it pays? Where's the truth, Arkan? He lifted his eyes. The mix of despair, spite, and begging in them made Arkan's skin crawl. I went down for something stupid, Sparrow went on, speaking to the air. I was 19, got in a disco brawl with the boys. We overdid it, broke some kid's jaw, and he was the prosecutor's son. They maxed us out. Aggravated hooliganism. 8 each for 5 of us. I landed here green and clueless. They tossed me in the press cell and beat me till I pissed myself. Then the shot caller, your predecessor Rook, shows up and says, roll with us in the work gang. Nobody touches you. I went, thought that was strength, thought that was justice. We don't touch the low ones. We respect the working men. That line. And then what? Then I saw that same Rook strip a hard-working man to the skin right before a visit with his wife because the kitty was short. I watched a young kid get pushed to go pay respects to an authority over card debt. Justice? There ain't any here, Arkan. This is wolf law. Either you eat or you get eaten. I'm done being the anvil between hammer and hammer. I just want to live. Hold my daughter. You understand? Belkovich listened with a faint smirk, like a director enjoying a clean take. You see, Arkady, he said when Sparrow fell silent and wiped his wet eyes on his sleeve. People wake up. Your thieves' romance works on juveniles. Life is simpler. There's family, there's freedom, and then there's this. He swept a hand at the office, the zone outside the window, the eternal scrapping for a bunk corner. Lame's on top now. He's clever. He talks to us. Gray's a rotten stump. He'll get written off soon. And you, Arkan, you're in the middle. Not with them, not with us, hanging. Men like that don't last. Not here, not outside. Arkan kept quiet. Sparrow's confession, pitiful, traitorous, laid over the gramophone man's tragedy and struck a raw nerve. He despised Sparrow for trading honor for a maybe, but somewhere deep he understood the motive, to claw out of hell at any price. Take him, the ops chief told a guard, nodding at Sparrow. And think, Arkady, think hard. Our next talk will be different. When Sparrow was let out, Belkovich pulled a folder from the drawer. Personal file, Kromov, Igor Petrovich, alias lame, fun character. Want the real story of how he became a thief? Not the fairy tale you hear at sit-downs. Arkin shrugged. He told himself he didn't care. He didn't grow up inside like you, not Blatnoy at all. Daddy was second secretary of a district party committee in Sverdlovsk, Golden Boy, University, the works. Got nailed for foreign currency rackets. Jeans, checks, Vinesh Pozeltorg. Daddy couldn't fix it. Too big a catch. Model case. War on speculation. They gave him 7. He came here all cultured, but with a brain. He clocked fast that with his charge and background, he wouldn't survive this zoo. Either under the bottom bunk forever, or work to death. He took a third route. He bought the shot caller. Money. Daddy still had strings. The zone got fat grease. Marlboro, Ceylon tea, cognac. Lame turned into a royal square in a hurry, then they crowned him. For what? For nothing. The old thief he greased was going to the max and named him acting. Recommendation, that's all. No right walks, no suffering for the idea, just money and connections. That's your thief-in-law. A merchant. He still is. He bargains with us, bargains with the cons. He stands wherever the price is right. He's not for the idea, Arkin. He's for himself. The ops chief fell silent, letting it settle. Arkin had nothing to process. He'd felt it for a long time, the falseness that bled off Lame, pragmatism that had nothing to do with the code. The confession only dressed his guesses in an ugly, accurate skin. Something inside him snapped then. Dry stick under a boot. His whole life built on that code, that faith, rose up as a grotesque lie. Gramophone playing Chopin in a stinking issue, Sparrow selling out his brothers for a daughter's medicine, Lame buying a crown with daddy's money, and Arkan himself, who laid his youth, his soul, and his only real friend on that altar. He raised his eyes to Belkovich. They were empty, burned out. "What do you want, Major?" A smile. He'd waited for that. "I want the truth, Arkady, all of it. The sit-down where you voted to stall Gray, the hit on Crutch, how Lame runs business with black marketeers on the outside through his people. I don't need your sworn statement. You don't have to be a snitch in the open. I need information. In return, I'll take Lame and Gray off the board. Quiet, clean. 1 to Max on a new case, 1 to White Swan. The zone stays yours. You'll run it for real. No rivals. Think about it. Not betrayal. Business. What your pal Lame has done for years." Arkin stood. The cold black hollow was spreading. He remembered the start. 17. Drunk stepfather beat his mother again. Arkin came home from trade school, saw her face smashed. He picked up the meat axe from the kitchen and waited in the hall. He didn't kill him. He chopped off 2 fingers on the hand the man used to hit with. They gave him 6 for grievous bodily harm. In juvie, he joined the refusers. It felt right. Power, brotherhood, justice. He thought he'd found a family that wouldn't betray. Thought he was fighting a crooked world of cops and squares. He remembered his crowning. 25. An old con called Owl, skin blue with ink like a star map, asked the vows, "Will you give up family, house, all worldly things for the idea? Will you die for a brother? Will you stake your life for thieves' truth?" He answered yes without a tremor. He thought he was swearing to something great, clean, immovable. Now he stood in the ops boss's office and all of it lay in ash. The idea was business, brotherhood a wolf pack, truth a tool. He looked out the window. Under muddy floodlights stretched endless gray, the graveyard of the living. He was one of them, one who bricked himself into this crypt in the name of a lie. "I won't be your errand boy, Major," Arkan said softly but firm. No shake. "I won't rule this zone. I don't need it." A frown. "Then what do you want? Rot here? Or get carved by Lame's boys?" Arkan turned slowly. No fear, no anger, only endless icy fatigue, and something else. The resolve of a dead man. "I'll tell you everything," he said. "Not for parole, not for power, not to save my hide. I'll tell it because the lie has to end. I'll tell on all of them. Gray, Lame, the outside men, the kitty, the sit-downs, the murders. I'll turn all this rot, yours and ours, inside out." He paused. In the hush, his next words sounded like a verdict. "And then you'll do what you have to, with it and with me." He didn't sound like a broken rat begging mercy. He sounded like a man set on burning down his own world, so the lie that birthed it would burn with it. He renounced not just the oath, he renounced his whole life. Belkovich studied him a long time, hunting for a hidden angle. He found only void, the void of a man who'd stepped off the edge. "All right," the major said at last, leaning back. "Talk, I'm listening." And Archon talked, cold, flat, names, dates, facts. The start of the end, for this zone's thieves' world and for his old life. He spoke a truth so ugly that, in his world, the only sentence was death. He was ready. The boiler room's wet heat wrapped Gray like a shroud. He sat on a rusted pipe, back to a frost-furred wall, and smoked the last cigarette in his stash. The tobacco was trash, mold and bite, but it didn't matter. Only the smoke mattered, thick and blue, drifting into the freezing air and vanishing like his life. 42 years old, 23 of them behind bars. He barely remembered the free world anymore. He couldn't recall the taste of real food, a woman's scent, or the feel of clean linen on skin. His universe had shrunk to concrete, razor wire, and men like Belyaev. He'd become a wolf himself, pack leader, thief-in-law. In the pocket of his prison coat lay a shiv, cold and smooth, honed to razor edge over long nights in the barracks. He hadn't made it for someone else. He'd made it for himself. The final argument in a debate that had to end today. For 6 months, the camp had turned into hell. Not the old bureaucratic hell he knew, with its fixed pecking order. A new hell without limits. After a group of modern refusers rolled in from the chemical colony led by Bohr, a 30-year-old slab of muscle with shark-dead eyes, the old setup collapsed. Bohr didn't recognize the thieves' code. He recognized force and money. The 80s had found a way through the wire. Shop bosses, dirty guards, dope. The old thieves, the few who still remembered the idea behind the crown, tried to rein him in. First under the knife went Artist, Gray's godson, the kid he'd helped crown 10 years back. They cut Artist in the drying room because he refused to let drug money for working stiffs touch the kitty. 5-on-1. Bohr himself slid the steel into his throat. Gray called a sit-down. Nothing came of it. Bohr's boys just bared teeth and flashed iron. They were younger, more numerous, ready to kill anyone, anytime. The admin, ops boss, and regiment chief rubbed their hands, blacks carving blacks, less paperwork. Gray smoked his cigarette down to the filter, burned his fingers, flicked the butt onto the floor powdered with coal dust. He knew he would die today. He wouldn't sell his life cheap, but he had no illusions. He had no chance against Bohr and his pack, but he wasn't going to slink off like a kicked dog. He was a thief. His last act wouldn't be a robbery or a murder. It would be a word. Truth. The kind that made him sick to speak. The boiler room door creaked. Fedya, a wide-eyed kid who ran under Gray, filled the doorway like a frightened rabbit. "They're gathered, Uncle Pasha," he whispered. Only the closest called him that. To everyone else, he was Gray. "Bohr's here. 20 men, all grinning. Maybe don't go. We'll shoot a kite to another camp. People will understand." Gray rose slowly, knees cracked. He gave Fedya a heavy, worn look. "Too late. There's nowhere left to send kites. It's the same rot everywhere. Go. Get to the workers' barrack and stay put. Whatever happens, keep your head down. Understood? I'll stay with you." "I said go." Steel edged his voice. "You want to live? Do what I said. This isn't your table." Fedya swallowed, nodded, slipped out. Gray closed his eyes a moment. He remembered being the same snot-nosed kid 25 years back, staring into the eyes of his first teacher, a thief of the Stalin school. The old man had taught him, being a thief isn't a job, it's fate, an idea. We are the convict's conscience. We stand against power of any kind, against injustice. We don't touch a working man, don't take his last. The enemy is the state and those who serve it. The convict's conscience. Gray's mouth twisted. What conscience when your own brothers carve one another up for a cut of poison peddled to exhausted workers? He straightened his coat and stepped from the boiler room into the long, dim corridor of the workshop block. Ahead, in the big bay where by day men bent rebar, a crowd had formed, 40 heads. At the dead furnace, Bohr stood in a black work jacket open on his barrel chest, inked with ugly jailhouse blobs. At his shoulders clustered his lieutenants, Ginger, Gap-Tooth, Cross-Eye, every face a heavy bull stare. Off to the side, a small knot of the old guard, thieves and floor bosses who had shared bread and swill with Gray for decades, barely 10 of them. Their eyes held fear. When Gray entered, talk died. Only the wind hummed through a broken pane far overhead. "Well, hello, Gray," Bohr drawled, stretching each word. The smirk never left his lips. "Heard you call to sit down? Some big speech lined up? Gonna shake your old man wisdom at us youngsters? Teach us how to live?" Gray walked forward and stopped 10 paces from Bohr. He swept the faces, lingered on the elders. Some dropped their gaze. Some stared back in despair. "I called you," Gray began. His voice was hoarse but carried. "To say the truth we all know but won't say out loud." He let it sink into the cold air. "I look at you, Bohr, at your pups. I look at you, old men. I don't see thieves. I see a pack of jackals tearing at a bone the master tossed." A muscle jumped in Bohr's cheek. "Watch your mouth, Grandpa. You're speaking to thieves." "No," Gray cut him off. "Thieves are dead. We killed them. Not the cops, not the screws. We did. We who wear stars and domes. We who swore the code." He stepped in closer. "What is the thieves' idea? Who remembers? Justice. Shielding the weak from the strong. Brotherhood. Where is it? When 5 of you butchered artists for refusing to poison working stiffs, where was your brotherhood?" Gray jabbed a finger toward the old authorities. "And you?" He turned on Bohr. "You call yourself a thief. You're a merchant, a peddler. Your code is money. You'd sell your mother for an extra slice of grease from the kitty. You turned the camp into a market. You trade everything, dope, clothes, lives. You're worse than turncoats, because at least turncoats admit which side they're on. You smear your faces with the thieves' title like cheap makeup." Graveyard silence. Even Bohr lost his swagger for a blink. He hadn't expected this. This wasn't an insult. It was a sentence, on their whole world, handed down by one of its pillars. "They taught us," Gray went on, pain naked in his voice, "that a thief doesn't work because serving the state is filth. Who do you serve? You work for the ops boss. He watches you slit each other's throats and collects a bonus for reduced incidents. You're his kennel dogs. He tosses you a bone, cover for the dope, a relaxed regime, and you gnash each other to get it, forgetting honor and conscience." "Shut your mouth, you," Bohr finally roared, color flooding his face. "You broke, you ancient wreck. You're playing cop games. You're a—" "No, Bohr, you're the one," Gray answered, calm. "You and your kind. You betrayed everything we believed in. You wiped your boots on our lives, on the blood of those who rotted for the idea. All you took from the thieves' world is the right to kill without consequence." Gray opened his coat. Blue domes swam on his chest, time-served marks, with 2 8-point stars at his collarbones. This, he touched the stars, once meant honor, that a man went through fire and water and did not bend, that he would die for the truth. What did you turn it into? A price tag, a butcher's label. He stepped again, barely 3 meters now. "I am Pavel Sidorov, called Gray, crowned in 71 at White Swan by Tooth Givey and painted. I lived 30 years by these laws, and today I say, there are no laws left, only greed and fear. I won't be part of it. I won't wear a name you ground into the mud." He looked Bohr dead in the eyes. "So I renounce, in front of all of you. I take off the crown. There is no thief Gray because there are no thieves. There's only you, rats in a barrel. Worse than a knife, in that world, laying down the crown was the ultimate sin, equal to suicide, treason against the core of your being. The old thieves recoiled as from a leper, horror on their faces. They understood Gray had written his own death warrant and dragged the last shreds of their era into the grave with him. Bohr laughed, loud, hysterical. "Hear that? He renounced. The old decided to confess before he croaks. Well, Grandpa, if you're not a thief, you're nobody. And there's one way we deal with nobodies." He nodded. Ginger and Gap-Tooth stepped up, steel sliding from sleeves. Gray didn't move. He waited. He saw 2 of his former brothers, the same elders he'd just scorched, edge toward the wall. Betrayal again. He didn't blame them. Fear is a heavy thing. One man didn't move. An old-timer called Wick, small and wiry, a traveler from many transfers, suddenly stepped to Gray's side. "He's telling the truth," Wick said quietly but clear. "All of it." Bohr sneered. "So you too, Fossil. Fine. 2 with 1 sweep. Less trash." Ginger and Gaptooth lunged. Gray had waited for that. His hand flashed into his coat pocket. The shiv he'd made fit his palm like it was cast there. He wasn't a ring fighter like Bohr, but the camps had taught him one rule: hit first, hit to finish. When Gaptooth swung, Gray slipped aside and drove upward, short and mean. The blade slid under ribs like butter. The man gurgled, dropped his steel, sank. Ginger froze an instant, then bellowed and charged Gray. At the same time, 2 of Bohr's bulls swarmed Wick. The old man fought like a cornered cat, but numbers told. Steel kissed his side, then again. Wick folded to his knees, clutching his gut. Gray parried Ginger's slash. The edge scraped his forearm, carving deep. Fire licked, then vanished. He saw only Bohr's face watching, smirking, emperor at his coliseum. 10 seconds, maybe less. Gray shoved Ginger off and broke for Bohr. He knew he wouldn't reach him. 2 more hit from behind, dumping weight. A blow chopped his legs. He dropped to 1 knee. Bohr drew a long, thin stiletto from his belt, savoring it. He crouched in close, breath hot with rot. "You told the truth, Gray," he hissed. "Only nobody wants it. People want a master. I'm their master now." The first thrust sank into the belly. Gray jerked, tried to wrench free. Hands pinned him. The next went into the groin, then the chest. Air tore from his lungs with a rasp. The world smeared, pain faded, only cold spread. He toppled onto dirty concrete. His shiv rolled from his loosening fingers. Shapes loomed, blurred. Bohr's laugh rang over him, triumphant. "Dump them," Bohr snapped. "And if anyone squeaks about what happened here, he lies beside them. Understood?" The last thing Gray saw was a dull bulb under a skin of dust, with snowflakes, tiny gnats of ice, spinning in its light through the broken glass. He saw his mother's face, almost erased by time, his first bid, his first oath, life to thieves, death to whores and cops. The joke of it. He died because he refused to be either. He told the truth. The truth died with him, here on this cold floor, to the laughter of the new owners of life. An hour later, the guards came with the ops boss. 2 bodies in lakes of blood. The boss prodded Gray's corpse with a boot. "There, 2 more stiffs, another domestic on personal animosity. Write it that way." A young sergeant winced. "Who are they, Captain?" The ops man smirked. "Trash, an old thief and some other nobody. Clean themselves up. Makes our job easier." He turned and left. The boots clattered after him. Silence pooled again. Gray and Wick lay side by side, 2 wrecked timbers from a vanished age. By morning, they'd be carted beyond the wire and buried in an unmarked pit. The camp would wake to a new day under Bohr's rules. The wheel turned again, grinding down the ones who tried to jam it. The truth had been spoken, but no one heard, or wanted to. In this world, truth wasn't needed.